I've spent years as the quiet backbone of our family, planning dinners, washing dishes, and building memories with my son Michael. But everything changed last Sunday when my daughter-in-law Lisa poured expensive wine for her mother while tossing dish gloves my way. "Could you start on those crusty pots first?" she asked, not even looking at me. Week after week, I watched myself become invisible. My homemade desserts pushed aside for store-bought cake. My traditional seat at the table given to her mother. My birthday remembered with a dishcloth while Lisa's mother received jewelry. Family vacations planned without me. My voice constantly talked over that Sunday as Lisa loudly directed me to wash dishes while serving special reserve wine to her parents. Something broke inside me. For the first time in my life, I quietly walked away. I simply put down the sponge, took my purse, and left. They didn't even notice I was gone. I spent all morning preparing my mother's lasagna recipe, the one Michael has loved since he was a little boy. 3 hours of careful layering, simmering the sauce with fresh herbs from my garden, and grating the 3 different cheeses by hand. I also baked a chocolate cheesecake, Michael's favorite, and packed our old family photo albums to show Lisa's parents the vacation pictures from when Michael was 10. The drive to Michael and Lisa's suburban home took 20 minutes, but I arrived early as always. Their house looked picture perfect from the outside: white trim, manicured lawn, and seasonal flowers in carefully arranged pots. I juggled the lasagna dish and dessert container as I rang the doorbell, eager to see my son. "Oh, you're early," Lisa said when she opened the door, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She wore a sleek black dress that made me feel frumpy in my floral blouse and slacks. "Michael's still getting ready. You can put that in the kitchen." I followed her through their immaculate living room, noticing how she'd redecorated again. The family photos that once included me were now replaced with artsy black and white prints and pictures of Lisa with her parents at various vacation spots. "I brought the lasagna and a chocolate cheesecake," I said, setting them on the counter. "And some old photo albums I thought your parents might enjoy." Lisa glanced at the albums and placed them on a side table without opening them. "Thanks. Could you help set the table? My parents will be here any minute." And so began another Sunday dinner at my son's house, where I'd taken on the role of kitchen helper rather than family member. When Michael finally came downstairs, he gave me a quick side hug before checking his phone. "Hey Mom, thanks for coming." His eyes barely met mine before returning to his screen. I settled into the familiar routine, folding napkins, arranging silverware, and making sure everything was perfect. When the doorbell rang again, the energy in the house shifted. Lisa rushed to answer it, her voice rising with genuine excitement. "Mom, Dad, come in, come in." She embraced them both warmly in the foyer. I could hear the animated conversation as they entered. "The house looks beautiful, sweetheart," Lisa's mother Judith cooed. "Those new curtains are exactly what this space needed." I finished setting the table and watched as Lisa led her parents into the living room, where Michael greeted them with enthusiastic hugs. No one glanced toward the kitchen where I stood. "I've got that special Cabernet you love, Dad," Lisa announced, pulling out an expensive bottle. She poured generous glasses for her parents and Michael, the 4 of them already deep in conversation about their upcoming vacation to Napa Valley. I hadn't heard about any Napa Valley trip. Clearing my throat, I stepped into the living room. "The table's all set. Should we serve dinner soon?" "Mom," Lisa's mother said suddenly, "did you bring those photos from the cruise?" As Judith began sharing photos from their family cruise, another event I hadn't known about, I retreated to the kitchen to check on my lasagna. The oven timer showed 15 minutes remaining, so I decided to pour myself a glass of wine and rejoin the conversation. When I returned to the living room, Lisa intercepted me before I could sit down. "Oh, Alina, could you grab some ice for the water pitcher?" As I turned to go back to the kitchen, I heard her add, "And maybe check if those old dish towels in the laundry room are dry. We might need them for dinner." By the time I returned with ice and dish towels, they had moved to the dining room. I noticed with a sinking feeling that Judith was sitting in what had always been my seat, closest to Michael at the corner of the table. The only empty chair was at the far end, next to Lisa's father, whom I barely knew. Something smells wonderful, Judith said as I took my new seat. Mom brought lasagna, Michael replied, not looking up from his conversation with Lisa's father about golf. Lisa emerged from the kitchen with a platter of appetizers I hadn't known were planned. I picked these up from that new bistro downtown, she announced, placing them directly in front of her parents. They use imported cheeses. My homemade lasagna finally came out of the oven, and Lisa served everyone while I filled water glasses. As we ate, the conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream, words parting and continuing on either side without inclusion. So the resort in Napa has those private cabanas by the pool, Lisa was saying. We've booked 2 adjoining ones so we can all relax together after the wine tour. When is this trip? I asked, trying to join the conversation. A brief silence fell before Michael answered, "End of next month. It's just a quick getaway." "Oh, and we need to tell them about the tickets to that show," Judith said, effortlessly steering the conversation away from my question. I focused on my lasagna, nodding that no one had commented on it despite it being Michael's favorite since childhood. When dinner was nearly finished, I mentioned the chocolate cheesecake I'd brought for dessert. "Oh," Lisa said with a dismissive wave. "Mom brought her famous tiramisu. Everyone loves it, right, Michael?" "It's incredible," he agreed, smiling warmly at his mother-in-law. "Maybe we can save your cheesecake for another time, Mom." After dinner, Lisa's mother produced a gift bag. "Look what I found in that antique shop we love," she said to Lisa. Inside was a delicate crystal vase that Lisa immediately placed on the mantel. "It's perfect," Lisa exclaimed. "Thank you so much." I thought about the dishcloth set I'd given Lisa for her birthday last month, which she'd accepted with a perfunctory thank you before putting them away in a drawer. The dishcloth that now matched the ones I was using to clean up their kitchen. As everyone moved back to the living room with coffee and tiramisu, Lisa approached me with an empty wine glass. "Could you start on those pots? They're really crusty from the sauce I made yesterday." She handed me a pair of rubber gloves. "Oh, and can you make sure to use the special scrubber for the nonstick pans? Last time they got scratched." I watched as she returned to the living room, pausing to pour another glass of expensive wine for her mother. My photo album still sat untouched on the side table. I stood at the sink, hands immersed in soapy water, listening to the laughter from the other room. Michael was telling a story about his first camping trip. A trip I had taken him on after his father couldn't get time off work. But in his retelling, it sounded as if he'd gone with friends. I wasn't mentioned at all. The conversation drifting in from the living room grew animated as they discussed the upcoming family vacation. I scrubbed harder at a particularly stubborn pot, my knuckles turning white around the sponge. "You'll love the vineyard we've booked for the private tasting," Lisa was saying. "They only open it for special groups." "Did you get that recommendation from your friend Caroline?" Judith asked. "Yes, the one whose husband owns that investment firm Michael's been consulting with," Lisa replied. "They took us there last month. The views are incredible." Last month. They had already gone on a preliminary trip. I hadn't even heard Michael mention a friend named Caroline or any wine tasting excursion. These days, I learned about my son's life the same way a distant acquaintance might, through overheard conversations. When I finished with the dishes, I dried my hands on a kitchen towel and gathered my courage to join them. I carried in a tray with coffee refills as an excuse to enter their circle. "Just set it down there, Alina," Lisa said without looking up. She was showing something on her phone to her parents. "Oh, Mom, you should see what Michael got me for our anniversary." I placed the coffee tray on the side table and tried to find a place to sit. The main sofa was occupied by Lisa and her parents, while Michael sat in the armchair. The only available seat was a hard wooden chair in the corner, slightly removed from their intimate semicircle. "Look at these earrings," Judith exclaimed, holding Lisa's phone. "Michael, you have such good taste." My son beamed with pride. "Lisa deserves the best." I thought about my last birthday when Michael had given me a card with a gift card to the grocery store. He'd apologized for being too busy to shop for something special. Now I understood he hadn't been too busy, he simply hadn't bothered. Speaking of gifts, Lisa's father said, we should show Alina what the kids got you for your birthday, Judith. Lisa eagerly pulled out her phone again, scrolling through photos. We found this gorgeous cashmere shawl from that boutique in the city and then took Mom for a day at the spa. Judith patted Lisa's hand affectionately. It was the most thoughtful gift. The dishcloth set I'd received flashed through my mind again. A $12.99 set from the home goods store, still in its packaging in a kitchen drawer. I cleared my throat. The photos I brought have some nice memories too. Michael, remember that trip to the lake when you were 10? You caught that enormous bass. Everyone glanced at the untouched albums, but Lisa smoothly redirected. Oh, that reminds me. Dad, tell Michael about that fishing charter you're considering for the guys' trip. Just like that, I was edited out of the conversation again. I sat quietly, watching as they leaned toward each other, sharing inside jokes and making plans. A strange sensation came over me. I could physically feel myself fatting, becoming transparent in this room filled with people who shared my blood but not my presence. After 30 minutes of this, I tried once more. Michael, did you have a chance to look at those retirement community brochures I dropped off last week? Since your father passed, the house feels too large for just me. My son looked up, momentarily confused. Oh right, sorry Mom, haven't had a chance yet. Things have been busy at work. We should look at them together sometime. I'd value your opinion. Sure, he replied, already turning back to his father-in-law's story. Oh, Lisa suddenly said, her voice rising with excitement. We haven't told you our big news yet. Everyone leaned forward expectantly. Even I felt a flicker of curiosity. We're thinking of converting the guest room into a home office for Michael, Lisa announced. His company is offering more remote work opportunities, and we want to create the perfect space. The guest room. The only space in their home where I occasionally stayed when winter weather made driving difficult. The message couldn't have been clearer if they'd posted a no visitors sign on their front door. That's wonderful. Judith clapped her hands. I saw some beautiful desks at that furniture store we visited. Yes, we already have a Pinterest board started, Lisa replied. Though we'll need to find storage for some of those old photo albums and things we've been keeping in there. My photo albums. The ones I'd carefully preserved for decades, documenting Michael's childhood and our family history. I sat very still, feeling something inside me begin to crumble. 3 years ago, when Robert died, Michael had promised I would always have a place in his home and heart. You'll never be alone, Mom, he'd said at the funeral. Yet here I was, profoundly alone in a room full of people. Lisa's father reached for his wine glass. This reminds me, we need to show you the photos from Lisa's cousin's wedding. You wouldn't believe the venue they found. More photos I hadn't been included in, another family event I hadn't known about. I watched as they huddled around the phone, exclaiming over images of people I'd never met, celebrating a wedding I hadn't been invited to despite being related through my son. The conversation continued to flow around me. I tried to listen to find an opening, but each time I began to speak, someone else's voice would rise and overtake mine. After several attempts, I simply stopped trying. As the evening wore on, they moved on to discussing their plans for the holiday season, still months away. We should book our flights to Aspen early, Lisa suggested. The good condos near the slopes go quickly. Aspen will be magical for Christmas, Judith agreed. I can already picture it. Christmas, the holiday I'd always hosted, even after Michael married. The holiday that apparently I would be spending alone this year. When Lisa stood up to clear the dessert plates, she paused beside me. Alina, would you mind washing these? The dishwasher's full and that tiramisu plate needs special care. The soap is under the sink. She handed me the stack without waiting for my answer, then turned to her mother. Mom, let me pour you some more of that special reserve wine Michael's been saving. I watched as she carefully filled her mother's glass with the deep red liquid. No one noticed when I stood up with the dishes. No one saw me look at the untouched photo albums. No one observed as I set the dishes down on the coffee table, quietly walked to the coat rack and retrieved my purse and jacket. With movements that felt both deliberate and dreamlike, I opened the front door and stepped outside. The cool evening air brushed against my face, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and possibility. Without looking back, I gently pulled the door closed behind me. No one called after me. No one came running to see why I was leaving. In the silence of their not noticing, I walked to my car, started the engine, and drove away. I drove without direction, streetlights flashing across my windshield like passing thoughts. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but my mind felt strangely calm. For 3 years since Robert died, I had centered my life around Sunday dinners and being available whenever Michael might need me. Now I was driving away from all of that, and the world hadn't ended. The highway stretched before me, and I found myself taking the coastal exit. Robert and I had celebrated our 25th anniversary at a small beachside motel called the Sandpiper. We'd walked along the shore at sunset, made love with the windows open to catch the sea breeze, and promised each other 25 more years. We got 15 before cancer took him. The Sandpiper looked exactly the same. A single-story L-shaped building painted pale blue with white trim, a neon sign missing a few bulbs, and a small office with a bell on the door. I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot and sat for a moment, my car idling. What was I doing here? I should turn around, go home, and pretend this momentary lapse in judgment never happened. I should be available when Michael realized I was gone and called in a panic. But another voice inside me whispered, what if he never calls? What if no one notices until next Sunday when there's no lasagna? I turned off the engine and walked to the office. The young woman at the reception desk looked up from her textbook. Can I help you? I'd like a room, please, just for tonight. She studied me with curious eyes, probably wondering why a woman my age was checking into a motel alone at 9:30 on a Sunday night. Single or double? Single is fine. I handed over my credit card, aware that I hadn't packed anything, no toothbrush, no change of clothes, not even my reading glasses. Room 12, she said, passing me a plastic key card. It's on the ocean side. Checkout is at 11. Room 12 was basic but clean, with a queen bed covered in a faded blue quilt, a small table with 2 chairs by the window, and a bathroom with miniature toiletries. I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly aware of what I'd done. I'd walked out on my son. I'd abandoned dishes in the sink. I'd left without saying goodbye. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out expecting to see Michael's name. Instead, it was a news alert about tomorrow's weather. No texts, no missed calls. I checked the time, 9:47 p.m. I'd been gone from Michael's house for almost an hour and no one had noticed. Something between a laugh and a sob escaped me. I silenced my phone and placed it on the nightstand, then walked to the window. Beyond the parking lot, I could see moonlight reflecting off the ocean. The same ocean that had witnessed my happiest anniversary. The same moon that had illuminated Robert's face when he promised me I'd never be alone. But I was alone. I'd been alone in that house full of people, more alone than in my empty house with Robert's memories. I opened the window, letting the salt air rush in. Then I did something I couldn't remember doing since Robert's funeral. I cried. Not quiet, dignified tears, but great heaving sobs that bent me double and left me gasping. I cried for the invisible woman I'd become, for the son who looked through me, for the daughter-in-law who saw me only as unpaid help, and for the husband who'd left me to face this diminished existence alone. When the tears finally subsided, I washed my face with a tiny bar of soap, brushed my teeth with my finger, and crawled into bed fully clothed. The sheets smelled of cheap detergent, but the mattress was surprisingly comfortable. I fell asleep listening to the rhythm of waves crashing against the shore. I woke to sunlight streaming through unclosed curtains and the distant cry of seagulls. For a moment I didn't know where I was. Then it all came rushing back: the dinner, the wine, the invisibility, the escape. My phone showed 10 missed calls and 5 texts. They had noticed, eventually. The first call had come at 11:22 p.m. Mom, where are you? The dishes aren't done and your car is gone. Call me. The calls grew increasingly worried, the last one coming at 1:15 a.m. Mom, if you don't call back in the next 10 minutes, I'm calling the police. This isn't funny. The final text from Michael read, Police say since you're an adult who left voluntarily, they can't do anything for 24 hours. Please let me know you're okay. Lisa is upset about the dishes you left. Lisa is upset about the dishes, not Lisa is worried about you. Not we're concerned for your safety. The dishes, I typed a simple response, I'm safe, need some time for myself. Then I turned off my phone, got up and walked to the motel office. The same young woman was there looking sleepy. Good morning, I said. I'd like to extend my stay for a week if possible. She checked her computer. That shouldn't be a problem. We're not busy this time of year. Thank you, I hesitated. Is there somewhere nearby I could buy some clothes and toiletries? There's a shopping center about a mile up the road. Has a discount store and a pharmacy. I thanked her and returned to my room, where I washed yesterday's blouse in the sink and hung it to dry. Then I walked the mile to the shopping center, enjoying the feel of morning sun on my face. The discount store yielded 3 simple outfits, underwear, and a nightgown. The pharmacy provided all the toiletries I needed. I added a notebook and pen to my purchases, feeling a strange sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. Back at the motel, I unpacked my modest new wardrobe and took a long shower. As I was combing my wet hair, I heard a soft knock at my door. Housekeeping, a voice called. Could you come back later, please? I replied. No problem. Instead of the housekeeper, a few minutes later there was another knock. When I opened the door, a woman about my age stood there, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob, wearing linen pants and a turquoise blouse. Hi there, she said with a warm smile. I'm Greta from room 14. Marie at the front desk mentioned we might be the only long-term guests this week, and I wondered if you'd like to join me for lunch. There's a lovely little cafe just down the beach. My first instinct was to politely decline. I'd come here to be alone, hadn't I? But something in Greta's open expression made me reconsider. I'd like that, I said. I'm a leaner. Wonderful to meet you, Alina. I'll knock on your door at noon. I nodded, closed the door, and leaned against it. I'd made lunch plans with a stranger. It was such a small thing, but it felt monumental. At 11:40, I turned my phone back on to find 12 more missed calls and a text from Michael. Mom, this isn't like you. Whatever's wrong, we can talk about it. Please come home. I texted back. I'm taking a vacation. We'll be in touch soon. Then I put on my new navy blue sundress, applied a touch of lipstick, and opened my door to the sound of Greta's cheerful knock and the beginning of something that felt remarkably like freedom. Lunch with Greta turned into a lazy afternoon walk along the beach. Unlike the tense, measured conversations at Michael's house, talking with Greta felt effortless. She was divorced, a retired literature professor who spent half the year traveling. I never planned this life, she told me as we strolled barefoot along the wet sand. When David left me for his research assistant, I thought my life was over. I was 52 and had been a faculty wife as much as a professor. But it turned out to be a beginning, not an ending. I envied her confidence, the easy way she moved through the world. How long did it take to find yourself again, I mean? She considered this, pausing to pick up a perfect sand dollar. Years, if I'm honest. But I started with small steps. I booked a trip to Spain by myself. I learned to eat alone in restaurants without feeling self-conscious. I bought a bright red convertible even though David always said they were impractical. She handed me the sand dollar. Each small act of independence built on the last until one day I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. I was actually happy. The following morning, Greta knocked on my door at 7. Beach yoga, she announced, holding 2 rolled mats. Best way to start the day. I hadn't done yoga since that community center class Robert and I took 20 years ago. I'm not very flexible, I warned. Neither is anyone when they first get out of bed, Greta laughed. Coming, an hour later I was breathless and sweaty but exhilarated. We joined a small group led by a tattooed woman named Sky who must have been at least 70 but could bend herself like a pretzel. Same time tomorrow? Sky asked as we rolled up our mats. Before I could demur, Greta answered for both of us. Absolutely. After a quick shower, Greta dragged me to a local winery for their morning tasting tour. It's never too early for education, she insisted when I raised my eyebrows at the 10 a.m. start time. The sommelier, a young man with kind eyes, guided us through 6 different wines. I'd always deferred to Robert's preferences when it came to wine. and after he died, I rarely bothered opening a bottle just for myself. Now I discovered I loved the crisp Sauvignon Blanc but disliked the oaky Chardonnay everyone else seemed to favor. Good for you, Greta said when I mentioned this. Life's too short to drink wine you don't love because someone else says you should. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the day. Michael's texts grew increasingly frantic, then angry, then pleading. Mom, the police say they can't do anything because you're responding to texts. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Lisa says if you're upset about something that happened Sunday, she's sorry. Please come home. Mom, I have work. I can't keep worrying about where you are. If this is about the Napa trip, you weren't excluded on purpose. We just thought you wouldn't enjoy it. I stopped reading after that one, silencing my phone again. On Wednesday afternoon, Greta took me to a local art studio that offered drop-in classes. The instructor, Margot, placed a lump of clay before each of us. Today we're not aiming for perfection, she announced. Just feel the clay. Let your hands discover what wants to emerge. I pressed my fingers into the cool, damp clay, feeling foolish at first. But gradually something happened. As I worked, I found myself shaping a small bird with outstretched wings. It wasn't beautiful or technically skilled, but it expressed something I couldn't put into words, something about flight, about breaking free. That's lovely, Alina, Margot said, stopping beside me. Will you be joining our Thursday class too? I looked up, surprised to realize I wanted to come back. Yes, I think I will. That evening, I joined Greta for dinner at a seafood restaurant overlooking the water. We were seated at a table for 4 and soon joined by Sky from yoga and another woman named Irene who owned the local bookshop. Fresh blood, Sky said with a wink when Greta introduced me. We're always happy to welcome another refugee from conventional life. I'm not sure that's what I am, I said hesitantly. Irene patted my hand. Honey, none of us started out planning to reinvent ourselves at 60 plus. Life pushed us here. The question is what we do now that we've arrived. Over fresh crab and white wine, they shared their stories. Sky had been a corporate lawyer who suffered a heart attack at 59. Irene had nursed her husband through a decade of Alzheimer's before opening her dream bookstore with the insurance money after his death. Each had found her way to this beach town and created a life that suited her, not the expectations of others. It's not always easy, Irene admitted. My children still don't understand why I didn't move closer to them after Frank died. They think I'm being selfish. Are you? I asked. She considered this. Maybe, but I spent 40 years putting everyone else first. If being selfish means finally prioritizing my own happiness, then I'm okay with that label. Their words stayed with me as I walked back to the motel alone, Greta having remained behind for another glass of wine. The night was clear, stars scattered across the dark sky like salt across black velvet. I kicked off my shoes and walked along the shore, letting the cold water wash over my feet. When had I stopped believing I deserved happiness? When had I accepted invisibility as my fate? Back in my room, I checked my phone. More missed calls, including one from Lisa. I listened to her voicemail. Alina, it's Lisa. Listen, Michael is really worried, and frankly, this is all very inconvenient. We need to know when you're coming back. Also, I wanted to talk to you about Mother's Day lunch. My mom wants to try that new bistro downtown, so we need to cancel our usual plans. Call Michael back, please. Cancel Mother's Day lunch, our usual plans. The words echoed in my head. It was still 2 weeks away, but they'd already decided to spend the day with Judith instead of me. And they hadn't even planned to tell me until now. I sat on the edge of the bed, expecting to feel the familiar sting of rejection. Instead, I felt something different. Clarity. I wasn't just taking a spontaneous break, I was at a crossroads. The next morning after yoga, I asked Greta if she knew of any short-term rentals in the area. Thinking of extending your stay? She asked with a knowing smile. Maybe. It's peaceful here. I feel like I can hear myself think for the first time in years. That afternoon, Greta introduced me to a real estate agent friend who showed me a small beachside apartment available for a 3-month lease. It was simply furnished but had large windows facing the ocean and a small balcony where I could drink my morning coffee. The rent was reasonable, especially compared to maintaining my 4-bedroom house alone. It's perfect, I told the agent. When can I move in? I'll draw up the paperwork today. You could move in by the weekend. I signed the lease that evening, feeling reckless and liberated all at once. When I told Greta over dinner, she raised her glass in a toast. To new beginnings, she said. Just returned to my motel room and was contemplating how to tell Michael about my decision when there was a sharp knock at the door. Not the gentle tap of housekeeping or Greta's cheerful rhythm, but an insistent, demanding knock that could only belong to one person. I opened the door to find Michael standing there, his face a mixture of relief and anger. "Mom," he said, "what the hell do you think you're doing?" I stared at my son, taking in his disheveled appearance. His usually perfect hair was uncombed, his eyes bloodshot. For a moment, I felt a stab of guilt. Then I remembered the dishes, the wine, the invisibility. "Hello, Michael," I said calmly. "Would you like to come in?" He pushed past me into the small motel room, his gaze sweeping over my new clothes laid out on the bed and the brochures for local attractions on the nightstand. "I've been out of my mind with worry," he said, running a hand through his hair. "We called hospitals. We filed a police report. I had to take time off work, and you're here having some kind of vacation." I closed the door quietly. "How did you find me?" Credit card statement. Dad always handled the finances, so I still get copies. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "Mom, what's going on? This isn't like you." There was genuine confusion in his voice, and I realized he truly didn't understand. To him, I was simply behaving erratically, deviating from the comfortable pattern he'd come to expect. "I needed some time to myself," I said, sitting in the chair by the window. "You couldn't have mentioned that before disappearing." "Before leaving a pile of dirty dishes in our sink, Lisa had to clean up after you." There it was again. The dishes, not my well-being, not my feelings, the inconvenience. "Michael," I said carefully, "when was the last time you asked me how I was doing?" Really asked, not just as a greeting. He blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" "Sunday night I walked out of your house, got in my car and drove away. It took you nearly 2 hours to notice I was gone." 2 hours, Michael. "We were catching up with Lisa's parents. It was a busy evening." "Too busy to notice your mother disappeared without saying goodbye?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Is that what this is about? You're punishing us because you felt ignored at dinner?" "Mom, that's so childish." That word, childish, struck me like a slap. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I took a deep breath. "I'm not being childish, Michael. I'm finally being honest. For 3 years since your father died, I've centered my life around you and Lisa. I cook your favorite meals. I show up early to help prepare. I wash your dishes while you drink expensive wine with Lisa's parents. And in return, I've become invisible in my own family." Michael's face flushed. "That's not fair. We include you in everything." "Do you? You planned a trip to Napa Valley without telling me. You're replacing the guest room, my room, with a home office without discussing it with me. You canceled our Mother's Day lunch because Lisa's mother wanted to go somewhere else." "How did you know about Mother's Day?" he asked, then immediately realized his mistake. "Mom, these things aren't personal. Lisa's parents are just more, I don't know, compatible with our lifestyle." "More compatible than your own mother?" He stood up, packing the small room. "You know what I mean. They travel. They appreciate fine wine. They're interested in the same things we are. And honestly, Mom, sometimes you can be a bit of a downer since Dad died." I stared at him, stunned by his casual cruelty. "A downer, I see. I didn't mean it like that." He sighed heavily. "Look, this whole thing is ridiculous. Pack your things, I'll drive you home, and we can forget this ever happened. I told Lisa I'd have you back by dinner." I remained seated. "I'm not going home, Michael." "What do you mean? I've rented an apartment here for 3 months." He stared at me as if I'd announced I was moving to Mars. "That's insane. You have a house, you have responsibilities." "What responsibilities? My husband is dead. My son has made it clear he only wants me around when it's convenient. I'm 62 years old, Michael. If not now, when do I get to live for myself?" He ran both hands through his hair, exasperation giving way to a new tactic. "Dad would be so disappointed in you right now." The words were calculated to wound, and they did. But they also ignited something else, anger. "Don't you dare," I said, my voice low and steady. "Your father would be disappointed in how easily you've let me be erased." Michael stepped back as if I'd physically pushed him. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Robert treasured me, he saw me." "When was the last time you really saw me, Michael?" not as a convenient babysitter or dishwasher, but as a person with my own needs and desires. The silence that followed was answer enough. Finally, Michael sank back onto the bed. Lisa's pregnant. The news should have thrilled me. A grandchild, something I'd hoped for since their wedding 5 years ago. Instead, I felt a cold knot of dread. Congratulations, I said carefully. We were going to tell you this weekend. That's part of why Lisa's parents were over on Sunday. We told them first because, well, they were there. Another exclusion, another afterthought. When is she due? November. He looked up, his expression softening. Don't you see, Mom? This changes everything. We need you now. Lisa's been really sick with morning sickness. We could use your help around the house. You could even move in for a while after the baby comes. Lisa's already talking about how convenient it would be. Convenient. There was that word again, not wanted, not valued, convenient. Michael, I said gently, I won't be your unpaid nanny. His face hardened. So that's it. You're just abandoning your family when we need you most. What about your grandchild? I'm not abandoning anyone. I'll be part of my grandchild's life, but on terms that respect me as a person, not just free labor. This is crazy, he muttered. What am I supposed to tell Lisa? Tell her I'm happy about the baby. Tell her I look forward to being a grandmother, but also tell her that things will be different going forward. He stood up, anger replacing confusion. Fine, have your little rebellion. When you're done playing beach bum, your chores will be waiting. And there will be even more of them with a baby in the house. As he reached for the door, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It's Lisa wondering where I am. You should go, I said. Don't keep her waiting. After he left, I sat in the silent room for a long time, replaying his words. A downer, childish, convenient. For the first time, I saw clearly how Michael viewed me, not as a person with my own life and dignity, but as an appliance that should function quietly in the background until needed. The next morning, I received a call from my neighbor, Betty. Eleanor, there's a flood coming from your house. Water's running down the driveway. I drove home immediately, my 3-hour absence from the beach feeling like desertion. The damage was extensive. A pipe had burst in the upstairs bathroom, sending water through the ceiling into the dining room and kitchen. The hardwood floors were already buckling, the walls stained and soggy. I called my insurance company, then a restoration service. As I waited for them to arrive, I wandered through the waterlogged house assessing the damage. When I reached the spare bedroom, I stopped short. The dresser where I kept Robert's things was empty, the drawers hanging open. His collection of vintage watches, which I'd planned to give Michael one day, was gone. So were the cufflinks, the tie pins, the monogrammed money clip I'd given him for our 20th anniversary. I moved quickly through the house, noticing other absences. The crystal vase from our wedding. The antique silver tea service from Robert's grandmother. The small oil painting we'd bought on our trip to Tuscany. When the insurance adjuster arrived, I asked for a moment before showing him around. I called Michael. The house is flooded, I said when he answered. And things are missing, valuable things, your father's watches, the silver, the crystal. A pause. We took them for safekeeping. Safekeeping? Lisa and I were worried about you, Mom. You've been acting erratic. We thought it would be safer to store the family heirlooms at our house until you're feeling more stable. You broke into my house and took my belongings. We have a key, Mom, and they're family heirlooms. Dad would have wanted me to protect them. I ended the call without responding. The cold fury I felt was unlike anything I'd experienced before. They hadn't just taken things, they decided I was incompetent, unstable, unable to care for my own possessions. 2 days later, with the restoration work underway and a security company installing new locks, I called Michael. I'd like to have dinner on Sunday, I said. At your house, the usual time. He sounded surprised but relieved. Of course, Lisa will be thrilled. She's been worried about you. I'm sure she has, I replied. Please tell her I look forward to seeing everyone. That Sunday, I arrived at their house precisely on time, wearing a new blue dress I'd bought with Greta's encouragement. I carried no food, no dessert, no photo albums. Instead, I brought only my purse and a small leather portfolio. Lisa opened the door, her face a careful mask of concern. Eleanor, I'm so glad you're feeling better. We've been so worried. I smiled pleasantly. What a lovely dress, Lisa. Is it new? She preened slightly. Yes, I picked it up last weekend. It's beautiful, I said, stepping inside. Blue has always been my color, too. Dinner started with an uncomfortable formality. Lisa had prepared roast chicken and new potatoes, a meal she knew Michael enjoyed. I noticed Judith and her husband weren't present, breaking their usual Sunday attendance. We thought it would be nice, just the three of us, Lisa explained, placing the platter on the table. Family time. I smiled politely, taking my seat, not my old seat at the corner near Michael, but the chair usually reserved for Judith at the head of the table. Lisa noticed but said nothing. You look well, Mom, Michael said, pouring wine for himself and Lisa. The beach agrees with you. Thank you, it's been a refreshing change. I gently placed my napkin in my lap. Would you mind pouring me some wine too? Michael seemed startled, then quickly filled my glass. We ate in awkward silence for several minutes before Lisa attempted conversation. We've been thinking about names for the baby, she said. If it's a girl, maybe Sophia after my grandmother. That's lovely, I replied. And if it's a boy, Michael Jr., of course, she said, smiling at my son. The meal continued with stilted small talk. They asked no questions about my time away, and I volunteered no information. When Lisa rose to clear the plates, she turned to me with a familiar expression. Eleanor, would you mind helping with these while I get dessert ready? It wasn't a question, despite being phrased as one. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. Actually, I'd prefer to stay seated, I said simply. My knee has been bothering me today. Lisa's smile froze. Oh, well, I'm sure Michael can help then. Michael looked up from his phone, confused. What? The dishes, Michael, Lisa said pointedly. I need help clearing them. Can't they wait until after dessert? Lisa's eyes narrowed slightly. They'll be harder to clean if the food dries on them. It's fine, I interjected pleasantly. I'm sure Michael would be happy to help his pregnant wife. Reluctantly, Michael gathered the plates and followed Lisa to the kitchen. I could hear their hushed, urgent whispers but couldn't make out the words. When they returned, Lisa carried a store-bought chocolate cake, ironically exactly like the cheesecake I'd brought that they'd rejected. So, Michael said after Lisa served the dessert, how long do you plan to stay at that beach apartment? I've signed a 3-month lease, I replied. But I've decided to sell the house. The fork in Lisa's hand clattered against her plate. Sell the house, but why? It's been in your family for decades. It's too large for one person, and the flood damage, while covered by insurance, has made me realize how much upkeep it requires. I think it's time to downsize. Michael leaned forward. But where will you live after the 3 months? I'm considering a permanent move to the beach. There are some lovely condominiums for sale in a community for people 55 and older. But that's an hour away, Lisa protested. How will you help with the baby? There it was, the real concern, not my happiness, not my comfort, just my utility. I'll visit regularly, I assured them. But I won't be available for daily childcare if that's what you're asking. Michael's face flushed. Mom, why are you being difficult? This works for everyone. You've been complaining about being lonely and we need help with the baby. It's the perfect solution. I placed my fork down carefully. Is it, Michael? Is it perfect for me to uproot my life to provide free childcare while being treated as an inconvenience in every other way? What are you talking about? He threw up his hands. We include you in everything. Do you? Last Sunday, your wife poured wine for her mother while handing me rubber gloves. You discussed vacation plans that excluded me. Lisa's mother got my seat at the table. My presence was so insignificant that no one noticed when I left for 2 hours. Lisa's face reddened. If you were feeling excluded, you could have said something instead of dramatically running away. Would you have heard me? Every time I tried to speak, someone talked over me. Every time I brought something, food, photos, memories, it was set aside in favor of whatever Lisa's parents provided. That's not true, Michael began, but Lisa interrupted. I'm sorry if you felt that way, but honestly, Eleanor, you've been so negative since Robert died. Always bringing up sad memories, always sighing about how empty your house is. It's exhausting. The truth of how they saw me hung in the air between us, exhausting, negative, inconvenient. I understand, I said quietly. And that's precisely why I need to make this change. I've discovered something these past 2 weeks. I'm not just an extension of you, Michael, or a convenient babysitter. I'm a person with my own life to live. "This is ridiculous," Michael exploded. "Mom, why are you being like this?" Dad would be so disappointed. I reached for my purse and removed the leather portfolio. "I brought something to show you both." I pulled out the family photo albums that had sat untouched at their house for so long. Opening the first one, I turned to a page showing Robert holding newborn Michael. "Your father adored you from the moment you were born," I said gently. "He taught you to ride a bike, coached your little league team, helped you with science projects, and stayed up late explaining calculus when you struggled in high school." I turned more pages, showing family vacations, birthdays, graduations. "He also adored me. He saw me as his partner, his equal, never as his servant or his inconvenience." I closed the album. "The man I married would never have treated anyone the way you've treated me, Michael. And he certainly wouldn't be proud of how easily you've allowed me to be diminished in my own family." Lisa was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "I never meant to make you feel unwelcome, Alina. I just thought, well, my parents are more fun, they're more like us. And I'm just a reminder of loss and obligation," I finished for her. "I understand, but that doesn't mean I have to accept it." Michael looked stricken. "What are you saying, Mom?" "I'm saying I deserve better. I'm saying if you want me in your lives, in your child's life, things need to change." "How?" Lisa asked, dabbing at her eyes. "Respect, reciprocity, recognition that I'm a whole person, not just an extension of your needs." I stood up, gathering my albums. "I'll always be your mother, Michael, but I'm also Alina, and Alina deserves to be seen." I left them sitting at the table, stunned into silence. Unlike my first departure, this time I said goodbye. This time they watched me go. 6 months later, I hosted Sunday dinner at my new beachfront condominium. The space was smaller than my old house but filled with light and carefully chosen furniture that reflected my own taste, not Robert's or our combined aesthetic. Michael and Lisa arrived precisely on time. Lisa's pregnancy had blossomed, her belly round and prominent beneath her maternity dress. She carried a bouquet of fresh flowers. "These are beautiful," I said, accepting them. "Thank you. I remembered how much you love dahlias," she said tentatively. Michael carried a box of Robert's watches. "We thought these should come home to you," he said. "They're your memories to keep." Greta arrived next, followed by Sky and Irene, my beach family who'd become as dear to me as blood relatives. We settled into the living room with its panoramic ocean view, sipping drinks as the conversation flowed. I noticed Michael watching me with curious eyes as I told stories and laughed with my friends. When Lisa asked about the vibrant painting over the fireplace, I explained it was my own work from Margot's advanced art class. "Mom, I had no idea you could paint," Michael said, genuinely impressed. "Neither did I replied with a smile. "There's a lot we can discover about ourselves when given the chance." When dinner was ready, we moved to the dining table I'd set with my mother's china and fresh flowers. I took my place at the head of the table, with Michael and Lisa on either side. "I'll get the wine," Lisa offered, starting to rise. "Please sit," I said. "In your condition, you should be resting." I brought the wine to the table myself, pouring a glass for everyone except Lisa, who received sparkling water with a twist of lime. When I reached my own glass, I filled it last, noting Michael's surprised expression. "To family," I said, raising my glass. "Both the ones we're born into and the ones we create." "To being seen," Greta added with a wink in my direction. As laughter and conversation filled my new home, I caught Michael watching me with newfound respect. Lisa asked genuine questions about my painting class and my weekly beach walks with Greta. When I mentioned an upcoming wine festival, they didn't dismiss it or talk over me later as they prepared to leave. Lisa hugged me awkwardly around her belly. "Next Sunday at our house?" she asked. "I'd love your help planning the nursery. You have a good eye for color." "I'd like that," I replied. Michael lingered after Lisa went to the car. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said simply. "I didn't see what I was doing." "I know," I said, touching his cheek. "We can't see what we're not looking for. Will you be okay here by yourself?" I smiled, looking around at my home filled with new memories, new possibilities. "I'm not by myself, Michael. I'm with Alina, and she's pretty good company."